Today I've got an interview for you guys with my friend and colleague Rob, and he's on the line here, so I'm going to go ahead and move over to him. He actually became a friend of mine after I taught him in college. So I went and taught at a university for a little while. It was actually the Art Institute of California in Hollywood, and he was one of my first students, and we got to know each other from that course. After he took my classes, he continued coming back and kind of sitting in on my lectures, asking questions, and being really inquisitive. And since then, he's been working in industry. It's probably been, what, 2, 3 years, 4 years? How long ago was it that you graduated, Rob?
I graduated in 2017, so about 3 years now. It's been 3 years since I've been back in school. It's been quite a wild ride.
Oh, man.
And you got to be honest, it was quite a rough ride since history-wise, I kept falling asleep in your class.
Oh gosh, yeah, you were definitely you fell asleep a few times, and since then you've really improved upon your skills. You've become a good developer. You've gone and worked at different companies over the past 2.5, 3 years. You were working at a company in, I think, LA, and then you went down towards like the Huntington Beach area for a little bit, and then you moved all the way out to Las Vegas. And now I know where you work because you actually work with me, but now you live in Boston. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and, before we talk about all your crazy travels, I want to see, what was your first motivation for getting into programming? What got you into the software development degree that you went into, which I think was actually a games department or a games degree?
Okay, so to be fairly honest, the biggest motivator was, well, laziness. I was lazy. When I first graduated high school, I was given an ultimatum. I either get a part-time job and just work, or I went to a college. And I was so lazy, I didn't even want to get out of the house very often. So I was like, you know what, I'll just go to the closest college I can think of. And the Art Institute ended up paying my high school a visit. So I was like, oh, we can try there. And months later, I get accepted to the Art Institute. I thought it was a great honor to be there, to meet the people there. Until recently, it was sadly shut down. But it was definitely one of the biggest motivators was just I didn't want to do part-time work. I was lazy, and I was very argumentative with authority, specifically with part-time work, because of the way they treat employees and the way history-wise I've gone through working with my father. Even he would treat me like garbage.
Oh gosh.
When I would work for him.
Well, that's really interesting. So what you're basically saying is you kind of came from a family with not as much of a background in education, not really as much pressure to go to college like other families out here. I know I came from a family that wanted me to go to college, but in your case it was different. You wanted to go to college, but your motivation was you wanted to go to college so you could be lazy. I get where you're coming from, but can you elaborate on that? What do you mean you wanted to be lazy? Because I know you're a software developer now. I know being a developer, being a programmer is not something where we're actually lazy. We're constantly thinking, we're trying to design solutions, we're writing code, we're breaking code, etc. Tell me a little bit more about that. What were you actually thinking the world would be as a developer when you went into that college program and when you were doing it?
I didn't think. So thinking back,
so you had no background or no real idea of what the role was?
I had no history of ever really working with software. The first computer we had was a Windows 98 when Vista was already a thing. So, and even then I was permanently barred from it because my older brother basically took full command of it. So there was absolutely no history between me and computers.
Okay.
So one of the biggest reasons that I definitely wanted to go to college, and thinking back on it, it actually was one that creeped into the back of my mind, I just didn't think of it at the time, is that I didn't want to start getting comfortable with part-time work. And I've always noticed that some part-time jobs, they are technically dream killers. Despite it being temporary, some people turn temporary to permanent. And I've seen it so many times with older siblings that they would do a temporary part-time job and then it just becomes a permanent part-time job that they stick with that same exact salary and the same exact work and the same exact people.
Okay.
It's like I didn't want that kind of a uniform in my life, and it's like I for growing up, I always did love video games. It was the biggest comfort I had in my life. It was a fun thing to always do, and I thought, you know what, let me give video game development a try.
Yeah, who doesn't
And
like making video games, right?
right, right. Um, I didn't know the amount of dedication and time it took to make a video game
Okay.
at the time, and I didn't know the amount of thought and the amount of science that went into it. So I just went into this blindly. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do if I'm gonna do this is gonna be the thing. This is gonna be what I'm going to do from here
So-
on out.
So with that, let's fast forward like a year or 2 years into your program. So you're now a college student. You've already been entrenched in the general education courses. You've probably taken a few programming courses. You're beginning to get a grasp of what it entails, the complexity behind the math, the science, the actual logical aspects to it. What did you think, like 2 years into it? Were you still like gung-ho, I want to be a programmer now because now I'm beginning to see what the role is like, and it's going to allow me to be lazy, or it's going to allow me to skip being in a blue-collar job and let me be in a more professional role where I get to be behind a desk and really use my brain rather than constantly doing labor? What did you think? I mean, what was your mindset at that point?
Okay, so my mindset, you say halfway through, so that's 2 years into it. So 2 years into it, the teacher that I had at the time, who had been with us for the longest time Brent was his name.
Yeah. I remember Brent.
Yeah, so he was there with us for a good crux of the entirety that we were there. But my mindset was that I was at the time, by like year 2, I was on the fence. I was like, I really want to do this. But every program that I had made in these classes, every script that I had written, it never worked. And that just completely boggled me down to when I got to year 3, I had actually considered leaving and doing just part-time work because it was getting difficult, and I saw everybody able to make a game and get so creative, and I couldn't get even one game, even a text-based adventure working. So my mindset was, I really wanted to do this, but I had to work twice, if not 3 times as hard to understand the complexity behind computer science, since I had basically no background in it. Everybody else had at least some background in it. Mm-hmm. I came in, I didn't even know what an int was. Everybody was answering questions on what a data type was, and I'm sitting there going, I have a watering hose. I don't know what this is.
Well, to make you feel better, and I'm pretty sure when I began teaching you, I remember we had discussions about this, and I remember at the time, I think you were working at a restaurant, you were bussing tables, and I think me and you had a few conversations after that. I think after your first quarter or two taking classes with me, and we really had talked about how you were really feeling the effects of imposter syndrome, and you were getting beat up by the fact that you didn't catch on really quickly, which now you know after years that, yeah, we all suck when we start out. None of us know what an integer, well, okay, maybe we know what an integer is sometimes, or like a whole number, but we don't know what it is in terms of programming. And I think that's something you don't learn for many years, and it's unfortunate. And luckily you were in the case where you did figure that out and you were able to keep on pushing through. So it looks like year 2 to 3, you began really, you had a little bit of a struggle. You weren't implementing things as quickly as everyone else. Going into your 3rd year, and then when you graduated,
even before that, I would say after I really should have put more time into it than I did, because out of class I didn't program, and I
remember yelling at you about that. I remember I was like, Rob, stop sleeping in my class.
I wholeheartily regret that now. I wholeheartedly regret that, because I spent every after school moment I had that I could up until like 3 or 4 in the morning just playing video games. Any new game that came out, I needed to get it. It was a must for me. PlayStation 4 came out. I got one of the first generations of the PlayStation 4, and I didn't put as much focus
It's in
into
the past.
understanding programming as much as I should. So
Yeah.
that's what made it worse. That's what made it worse is because I even with the struggle, I didn't work to improve
Yeah.
because lazy.
You can look at it as being lazy and all of these things, and we joke about it now. I mean, at the time, you didn't really know better, so you can't blame yourself thinking back on it. And I know right now we're thinking in the past, and we're beating you up about it, and I beat myself up about it years ago too. So I totally get it. But yeah, I mean, it's really rough when you're in college and you're struggling and you're not putting in the time and effort to really get better. You just don't get better. If you don't practice, you're not going to improve. It makes sense. So
Mhm.
it's awesome to see. I know nowadays you really have improved. You're a freaking professional developer now, which is awesome. And I know your entire family's proud of you. So let's transition from the college years and tell me about the struggles you faced coming out of college. So when you wanted to get a job, tell me about that.
Oof. You got to remember, I actually, thankfully and luckily, started working in industry while I was in. I was actually, when I first got my first job down in Santa Monica, that was my first job. I was 1 quarter away from graduating.
But you weren't taking a full-time load at that point, were you?
Now I was.
Oh, you
I
were?
was.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, they
whoop,
hired
over my
me. They
head. I don't
hired me as
remember.
a They hired me as an intern contractor, and I was there almost
Oh,
Monday through
yeah.
Friday.
I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah, I was there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
So who were you working for at that time? And you don't have to share
Uh,
their name if you don't want to, but you were working over in Santa Monica.
yeah, Santa Monica. Quite a drive. I do miss the drive into Santa Monica sometimes. I took the scenic route. I avoided the 405 like the plague,
Okay.
and I took an amazing scenic route up Topanga Canyon, and it was such a beautiful sight. I mean, it took me about 45 to almost an hour to get to work, but it's definitely much quicker and much more scenic than the 405.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in Santa Monica. It was with a company that basically just did contract work for bigger companies. So they
Okay.
did contract work with like Crayola. They did contract work for what was that other Mattel. They did
Oh,
contract work for
nice.
Mattel,
Yeah.
and all of it was all the same. It was just mobile applications, phone applications that they could do and that they could use, and that was the crux of the work. It was just phone games.
And were you guys working on the applications in Unity or something? C sharp? What
We
did
were
you
doing
what
we
did you do there? So you were an intern. Tell us about what you did. What were you doing as an intern for this company working on games for big companies like Mattel and Crayola and stuff?
When I first started, for the first months when I was labeled an intern, I was a tester. I was a QA engineer
Oh,
essentially.
okay.
So for the first month and a half, I think, or even 2 months, they just had me pick up any program that they made, like Crayola's Color Alive was one of the programs that they made. I picked that one up, and they just had me test that. I had to find all the issues. I had to, put them onto. I think it was Jira that they were using. I
Oh,
do
yeah.
not remember. But I had to
Probably.
pick up. I had to pick up the program, find all the bugs, and then report it. And then the other engineers would get to work on fixing it. And it
What were
was
they using though? So was it in Unity?
it was all in Unity. It was
Okay.
all in Unity. And for some of the projects, was using Unity and AR Toolkit. AR
Oh,
Toolkit.
sweet. Okay, so you got some early exposure to AR programming as an intern. That's awesome. How did they get you up to speed? So when you joined them as an intern, did they train you on how you were going to do the QA and they showed you like, oh, this is what you need to look for testing, or this is the software you're going to use for testing, or did they have you use some automated testing tools, unit testing? Did they train you on any of that, or did they just give you the app and say, have a field day and break it?
That's exactly what they did.
Oh, really?
Well, I did work closely with the QA guy that they had at the time,
Okay.
but most of the time they were just like, find anything, any way you can break it, and then let us know how you broke it, and let
Oh,
us know how
okay.
you did it. And the
Huh.
only formula that I had to follow was that when I submitted the breakage report, I guess you could call it,
Uh-huh.
when I submitted the report, I would tell them how I got that problem to come up,
How to
how
replicate.
often it came up, and
Yep.
how anybody was supposed to recreate getting that problem to come up.
Okay. So you were submitting bugs through probably Jira. You're submitting them on there, or you're doing a form, and you were writing what the bug was, how you came across the bug, and then how to potentially replicate the bug for developers, right? Well, that's
Yes.
really cool. Did you ever get any exposure to the actual programming side of it, or did you get to do any coding for them?
I did. So after the 3 months were over as an intern, matter of fact, I didn't even start. I actually did start programming the second month into my internship there, before my label changed from intern to junior engineer.
Oh, congrats! You had a promotion that early in your career. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was very thankful
Intern
for
to
that.
junior. With years of experience, you know my opinion on junior developer titles and all of that, but we'll go into that another time. So continue on. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so I ended up being labeled a junior engineer after 3 months, but a lot of my programming work started, I think, my second or third month into my internship, and it was just a 3 month internship I actually got called in for, and it got extended to a 6 month contract.
Okay.
Um, and I was very thankful that they didn't have me jump onto a project that was already in the works and that I had to learn somebody else's code.
Uh huh.
This was when they got one of Mattel's projects, and this was brand spanking new. I had to work with the lead developer
Okay.
at the time, and I had to start working on the UI. They had me do UI programming using NGUI.
Okay. Yeah. Were you guys doing the Unity 4 at the time or Unity 5?
We were using Unity. What was the highest one at the time? Unity 5.8, I think it
Oh,
was.
okay. Oh, that's interesting. They were still using NGUI in Unity 5. I know Unity 4 NGUI was like the cream of the crop. That's what you used for interface development. But when we moved
And
over to Unity 5, I believe they integrated it with Unity. So, but
yeah, and then NGUI was thrown out the window. But
yeah,
for the development time that I was there, they really wanted to use NGUI, and
okay,
I didn't understand why. But I guess that they were just comfortable with NGUI more than anything. So I had to teach myself NGUI, despite the fact that I already understood Unity's UI system, the
okay,
new UI system in Unity 5.
yeah,
Um,
huh. So it seems like your first job, you got an internship while you're still a student. You graduate. Did you graduate before they moved you into a full-time role, or before they turned you into a junior dev?
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
So I think I started around January,
Uh huh.
and my graduation technically happened in January.
Okay.
And then actually, yeah, at the end of my internship, I ended up fully graduating, and then I did the whole ceremony thing.
That's awesome. Well, that's an interesting progression. It's a great experience that you got there. But let's continue on because I really want everybody to hear about your progression here. So after this, I know you became a junior developer. You did 6 months with them, and then unfortunately, I think you were let go.
I was let go.
Yep.
Budgeting issues, they had to cut back, and one
Okay.
of the ones that they cut back was me, because at the time my contract with them was expiring. So
Mhm.
rather than fully fire me, they decided, you know what, we're just gonna let it fully expire, and we're just gonna part ways here. And
That's cool. That's at
had it
least
not had
respectful.
it, I'm sorry.
That seems at least respectful. I mean, they let you work out your contract, right?
Yeah, they let me finish it off, and they actually gave me an extra 2 weeks.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. A little
so an
severance.
extra 2 weeks after the final day of the contract.
That's
I
really
was very
cool.
thankful for that, because that really was that gave me more time to learn and gave me more time to understand
Yeah.
the business.
Okay. Where do you go from there? So I remember that happened. Then what did he end up doing after that?
Uh,
And I
let's
think I know
see.
what this is going to be, but go on.
Um, I, this was the struggle. If you wanted to actually get my progression, the struggle that started after I got let go, and I couldn't find work. It was
Okay.
late August. I could not find any work. Nobody was willing to hire me. Nobody gave me a call for an internship. No, or another, not even another internship. Nobody gave me
Yeah.
a call for a junior dev role or even any dev role. I got nothing for a good 6 months until 2018, till the beginning
Okay.
of 2018. And then I finally found something up in Lake Forest, California. Now,
Okay.
keep in mind, I lived in Winnetka, California. Lake Forest is a 2-hour drive from Winnetka.
Yep.
So rather than relocating to Lake Forest, when I finally got brought onto this job, I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do a 2-hour drive, driving the 405 to the 5, all the way to Lake Forest just to be there by 9 o'clock.
Okay, so for you guys that are from the LA area, you guys know, I think the actual distance between Winnetka and Lake Forest is only like 40 miles, right? It's what, like 30, 40 miles, something like that, Rob? Is that right? I,
Yeah, I think so.
so
Yeah.
if there's no traffic, it's probably like a 45-minute drive, something like that. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah, because I would get there at about 8 o'clock or 8:30. But if I left anywhere later than 5 o'clock, I was not getting there at 9 o'clock. I was getting there late.
Well, if you were waking up at 4, what time were you leaving?
4:30.
4:30. Okay, so you're looking at like an hour and a half drive. Was there no traffic in the mornings?
That early in the morning? No.
Okay, so
There
it's
was
still
absolutely
an
no
hour
traffic.
and a half drive, even without traffic.
Yeah.
That is crazy. That's
Distance wise, actually Lake Forest is halfway to Las Vegas from what I remember.
no, no way. You keep talking. So tell people about that job. I'm gonna look up the distance because I want to know exactly what that was.
I mean, it
But
was near San Diego.
no, it was near Orange County. It was just south of Orange County. It was almost getting to San Juan Capistrano, but I don't think you were getting that far south. But anyway, let's go. Keep going with what was that role? So what did he end up getting hired to do there? So we know
I
you 2-hour commute each way. What did he end up doing there?
I got a full Unity. I ended up getting the label full Unity developer, and I was doing. Well, my contract is up, so I can talk about it. I guess I was doing a lot of VR virtual reality work using. I was using the HTC Vive, and I actually got to test the HTC Vive Pro, the blue one,
Oh yeah.
before it was fully released to the public. So that was one of the best benefits of that. It was amazing. It was one of the most fun projects I got to use and I got to work on, and I actually got to learn a lot of VR just through that alone.
So what were you guys doing? And you don't have to elaborate on the details, but what kind of like games or things were you making?
These were one of them. One of the projects that I was working on was a project for the U.S. military. So they were going to use this into, I guess, vet any new up and coming servicemen and see what they would give them as a role
Okay, so
in the
you're talking
military.
about like simulation training type applications, but also would help them gauge your skills or capabilities.
Yeah, so depending on what the recruit did in this simulation,
Uh huh.
the Navy would use that to determine what job they would have when in the Navy. So let's
Okay.
say when you did the simulation and you did a specific job like put out a fire, they would make you part of the fire brigade, I guess. Or
Okay.
if you spent most of the simulation in the kitchen, they would put you in kitchen duty in the Navy.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, okay. I can imagine how they would do the kind of measure that. That's kind of a opinionated based way to do analytics and measure somebody's ability or desire to do X, Y, Z skill or job. But that's interesting. Okay, so you got exposure to doing that. So did you do the primary development on that?
Yes, yes, I did. I didn't start the project. The developer at the time had already gotten a lot done with the project, but then I
Uh-huh.
came in and I did. Then I came in and had to, as quickly as possible, get it up and running and almost finished off so that they could send a prototype to the Navy.
Okay. Was this a small company that you began working for?
Yeah, this was a relatively small company.
Okay. Do you think you learned a lot from that experience? Did you learn anything good? Like, what are some key takeaways you would say you learned from that job?
Key takeaways. That's a good question. I definitely enjoyed learning VR.
Okay.
VR, and how big it started to become, and how big it is today, even, and how much attention it's been getting. It's definitely one of those things that I think everybody should be trying to get into if they really want to get into the games industry. Because from what I've seen, Gabe Newell even and Valve have been really
Yeah.
pushing the HTC Vive and the VR aspect
Oh
of
yeah.
their projects, and a lot of their projects are mostly VR from what I see.
Oh yeah. They are always touting it, and I have a Vive here too. I think I demoed it for you guys when you were still students at one point. Oh, you weren't at that class, were you?
No, I was. I
Oh, you
was.
were. Okay.
I remember one of my classmates punched the screen.
Yep. I do remember that.
Exactly. I
Well,
was
good
there. I
times.
was
Good
there.
times. That's really cool. So you like doing VR. This was your first real exposure to being like a full time developer. You went from college to
This
working. Oh, go ahead.
this actually was my first time being learning the underbelly of being a full-time contractor.
Ah, okay. That is a big difference between being a
There's
full time employee or running
Yeah,
your own business. So,
yeah. I was
what
a,
did
I
you
was a
learn?
read the contract, negotiate the contract.
Yeah, so that's a
I
note for you guys. If you're
note for
Go
note
ahead.
note for anybody who is new and up and coming who watches this. Read the contract. Don't be afraid to negotiate. And
I
definitely,
give you
that's another
claps
that's another thing. That's another thing I learned is, like, definitely get a retainer. You
if you
definitely get
can.
like
Yeah.
some kind of a retainer. Get paid before you even start the job.
This man has learned a lot. I definitely approve this message.
Well, that's actually I had only worked there for 3 months, three
Yeah.
months total before I left. And the
Yep.
reason I left is because my contract had been breached.
Oh
I
gosh.
did not get paid.
Yep.
And that this is personal experience why any up and coming developers heed my warning. Read the contract, get a retainer up front, make sure you get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the rough parts about doing any kind of contract work. So, some of the other posts that I've put up on YouTube already talk about the difference between like small business, mid-size, large corporation, contracting, and then also running your own business where you're either freelancing or you start an LLC in a firm or an agency. And one of the big things you don't learn, especially like when you were in your undergrad and you were in college, nobody taught you how to evaluate a contract. They didn't teach you the ins and outs of talking to a lawyer, and I think that's horrible. I think they should have given you at least the basics. You should understand how contracts work, how the payments work, how you protect yourself, how you should
Um,
charge ahead, stuff
I'm
like
gonna
that.
I'm gonna cut in and say there was warnings, but I didn't get the warnings from the programmers. I got the warnings late in the game,
Uh-huh.
and I got the warnings from teachers I actually regret not listening to. Is because at the time, even though I was taking a course for programming and programming video games,
That was me.
I
I think I warned him too, but
you threw that warning too, but I had actually heard that warning before you, and I should
okay.
have heeded that warning
Okay.
by one of the art teachers. So at the time, I
I
was
can
also
imagine who
taking
this
art
was.
classes, and art teachers will heavily push
Oh yeah.
students to make sure to negotiate contracts.
Absolutely. Yeah, the art side of the game is very heavily contract based. So those guys have to learn how to protect themselves and they have to learn a little bit of the ins and outs, but I still don't think they teach it well enough and they should really make it a full course. I mean, learning how to navigate contracts, job applications, all of this should really be a full course. But again, that's another topic for another time. Let's keep going on with your career. So you were not paid for that job. How long did it take you to get that money finally?
So from when I left, it took me around 7 to 8 months before I saw the last bit of what they owed me.
That's crazy. How did you end up figuring that out? Like, I can't imagine going a month or two without getting paid, because I mean, just the cost of living is insane. How did you get by? I mean, did you get another job right away?
I did get another job. So at the time, the moment I heard the first excuse from the owner, which by the way, that's another telltale sign you're probably not going to get paid. So if you walk up to the owner, day 30 of your month contract, day 30, and you ask for payment, and they say wait till the extra 30 days that they have to pay you, and then they give an excuse when you reach week 2. That is a warning that they're planning on not paying you, and they're going to dodge you.
Okay, interesting. Oh, that is definitely a crappy scenario to be in. I definitely feel for you. I definitely understand. Oh, it looks like you just got a little buzz there. But I definitely figured that was a really stressful situation. But what did you end up finding?
I ended up finding a job in Las Vegas, of all places. And it was working for a company called Competition Interactive. Great company, great people, great. It was one of my top favorite companies, because it was also the first time I stepped away from being a contractor, and I stepped away from having to negotiate, payments, and stepped away from having limited time of working, and it became a full-time salaried employee.
Okay, that's awesome. So, what was that role all about? How did you get that? What was the interview process like?
The interview process. So I ended up getting a call from. I ended up getting an email of somebody from there that they wanted to talk to me. So I ended up talking to HR there at the time, and from there they had me do a phone interview with the 2 developers that were there. And I talked to them. They mostly asked about my experience. They asked about they asked me what I know about Unity, how my work with Unity has been. Because the role was primarily Unity work.
Yeah.
And they asked me a few technical questions with Unity in regards to what it's about. But they also sometimes they actually asked me questions about who I was as a person.
Oh, interesting.
And I ended up getting brought. I got asked to come in and do a in-person interview with the owner, or was it the owner? Yeah, the owner of the company. And then from there, I met the rest of the team, and then they ended up sending me out an offer, and I took the offer, and I made my transition to living in Las Vegas.
Okay. So you were working at the company over in Lake Forest, and before I forget, I did look up the distance of that. So Lake Forest, California. So here it is. I just pulled up on the maps, and you guys should see this. So it is 73.5 miles away from Winnetka, and it is an hour and a half drive when it's clear. So you were totally probably right that is a long drive. I don't know how you did that.
It was definitely too much. It was too much to be up at 4 a.m. just to drive all the way to Lake Forest. It was way too much. It was uncomfortable. It was painful.
That is nuts.
And I was driving a beat up old Nissan Maxima that was a champion the whole way. It got me there and it got me home. It was a champion.
And it took you to Vegas, right?
It took me to Vegas twice, and then eventually it died. So that car, to this day, I will sing its praises. It was a champion.
It was a champion little hoopty.
Yep.
That's awesome. So now you made your way out to Competition Interactive. So I'm assuming you submit an application for them, right? So you submit an application for them online. Did you do it through their website, through a job board?
I'm going to be honest, I do not remember, because one of the number one lessons you ended up giving us was keep applying.
Yep.
Throw millions of applications.
Never stop applying, even after you have a job. Everybody. That's a plug. If you are not applying right now, take a break from watching this or play it on the side and start applying right now. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I threw hundreds and hundreds of applications. I don't even remember how I got to their website. I don't even remember if I applied on their website or if it was a ad on LinkedIn or Indeed. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember submitting an application. Then I ended up getting an email that they wanted to talk to me.
Yeah, that's how it ends up being. And I'm assuming that was a recruiter call. And then you mentioned they did a call with you, like a technical phone call with an engineer or something?
It was a recruiter call. Then it was the technical with two engineers. So it wasn't a call. It was a full-on Skype chat with the engineers.
Did you guys do any technical programming? Because I know a lot of companies will have you do technical programming, so you'll actually jump on a screen share in a code editor or just a notepad, and you'll actually have to answer questions and talk about it as you go. Is that what you ended up doing, or was it just a conversation, like interpersonal?
It was an interpersonal conversation, and then from there I had a final meeting with the owner, and then they sent me the offer.
Nice. And was this offer an improvement from what you were doing before?
Oh, big time.
Okay.
Big time, because at least I knew for a fact I was getting paid.
Well, you knew that because you were going to be an employee, but financially, the money, it was actually a little raise, right?
It was a raise, yeah. It was
Okay.
It was $1 difference.
A $1.
It was $1 difference, but it was a significant difference.
Yeah, $1, but $1 as an employee, which is actually a big difference on your taxes. And you were in Nevada, where they don't have state income tax, so you had a big difference there. Lower cost of living. And before that, you were a contractor living in LA, traveling 2 hours each way and paying your own taxes. So that's a huge difference technically. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And a good amount of my check for those 2 hours that I would drive, a good amount of my check went to gas just to get there.
Oh,
so yeah. I almost didn't make the amount that was needed to basically survive.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. You look back on it and you realize it was basically just experience filling, right? So you needed to get some experience so that you could increase your income and get a better job. So you spent 6 months eating it, just trying to get by while doing a crappy job. Let's be honest, that was a horrible shit show of a job.
It was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I loved the idea of being able to say I got to work with the military.
Yeah.
But this company was a subcontractor.
Yeah.
They did not take care of the employees.
And that's not something to hate on other subs, because subcontracting's super normal. Lots of companies subcontract, big companies and small ones. But this was a tiny show. This was a tiny company, and they did not take care of you guys. I think you had a good experience with some of the other developers, and you learned a ton.
I had a good experience, definitely, and I will say that I also learned that I should have pushed to work remotely. Because I ended up getting because of the travel, I technically got mislabeled. It's like I should have been allowed to work from home and come in only like once or twice a month.
That's when you get into the whole misclassification of employment versus contractor title. And that's a whole big issue in the industry. And it's a problem across all the software development world. Companies don't want to classify you as an employee because then they have to take on the payroll taxes and the responsibilities therein involved. They rather just keep you as a 1099, even if they require you to come on site, and that breaks that basically leads into being a misclassification of employee versus contractor, which is a big issue to the government and the IRS, but they don't usually get caught, so nobody cares. That's a whole nother topic, though. So let's move you back to, you're now in Vegas. You've got the job. You've got this awesome raise. You have enough to live. What were you doing there? So what was your new role?
I was a casino game developer. Ooh. We were developing casino games, and we were working with hardware and electrical engineers to develop cabinets. And I think I still have my membership, but I was also a member of the Nevada Gaming Board, because you have to be registered under them in order to do work
Huh.
for casinos.
I did not know that. I wouldn't think that you would have to be registered if you're just a developer. That's crazy.
Yeah, because you're developing casino games, you have to get permission.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah,
So they have to the
I
Nevada
don't
Gaming
know.
Board has to they have to do a full background check. I actually had a
Okay.
full background check done on me by the Nevada Gaming Board to make sure that I wasn't a fraud, that I wasn't a thief
Huh.
trying to get into the casino world.
Yeah, they probably want to protect their money. So that
They
makes
really
sense.
do. They really do. They really do want to protect it.
So what were you doing there? You got the job, you were whatever certified and background checked. What were you actually doing day in, day out?
Day in, day out, I was coming in, I was sitting down on a desk, and I was working in Unity to make a casino game. And the casino games weren't just your typical slot machines, they were slot machine video game hybrids. This was the
Mm-hmm.
first time that the Nevada casino gaming industry had ever really had this, which was interactive, playable slot machine games.
Okay, so what differentiates what you're talking about and the normal slot machines that I see if you go to any casino? So there's a lot of casinos that do slot machines. A lot of them use, I mean, basically, some of them do use Unity already. What's the difference between what you guys are doing and those traditional ones, which are just like the three wheels that spin, and then you just kind of bet and you get the cross angles and you get paid out if you get matches?
The difference was we actually tried to make them fun.
Okay. I think that's relative to the person gambling. I swear, the few times I've gone to the casino, the older people, not judging the older people look like they're enjoying putting their dang money into these machines and they're loving it. But what's the difference between your guys? Is that why was it a better experience than those? If you can
Why
say.
was
I'm gonna
if I
pick
can
and
say
probe
why
until you
why
tell me,
was it?
but
I mean, it was basically a full video game
uh-huh.
made into a casino. So it's like taking what's the
So is
famous
this like
what's
an
the famous what's like a famous phone game? Just take your number one famous phone game and turn it into a game you can make money off
Flappy
of
Bird?
via casino. Flappy Bird. It's like taking Flappy Bird and making it a casino game.
Okay.
And as you win, you give incentive to continue playing.
Interesting.
It was a different form of gambling, I
Okay.
guess.
Okay. So were you doing the Unity development there?
Yes, I
Okay.
was.
And did you have any kind of training? Did anybody show you the ropes, and or did you just kind of get thrown in? This is the game we want to make. Here's your lead. He's going to prioritize and give you tasks and go do it.
Yeah, so I came in and they had me work on one game. I don't want to.
You don't
I'm
have to
gonna
say it.
try to. I was gonna say it's like, oh, they had me work on a game, and I had a lead developer take command of me, and dude by the name of Robert, he shared my name. So I actually had to go by a different name for the time I was there.
Okay.
Great lead developer. I miss the guy to this day. He was a great teacher. He was a great teacher
That's
for
good.
while I was there. So anytime I had questions, he was always open to take a couple seconds out of his time. If he wasn't so swamped, he would take a couple seconds and help me out with any programming issues I would have, or he would pull me aside and show me any new programming techniques that I should learn, or any new technologies that I should be aware of. Me and him would talk about it.
Okay. So you actually had somebody that took you under his wing. That's awesome. Not everybody gets that exposure. That sounds like it was a really good experience, right?
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. It was a fun time, and it was one of the first times that I was relaxed and I fully enjoyed the job. And I was
That's awesome.
I woke
Okay.
up every day looking forward to just arriving.
Oh man, this is like like an advertisement for that company right now. What was their name again?
Competition Interactive.
Competition Interactive. This is like an advertisement for your guys' culture here. So if any of you guys do watch this, you guys owe Rob. So you were there for how long? About a year?
I was there for about a year. Yeah,
Okay.
I was
So
there for a year.
So you were there for a year. How was the heat in Las Vegas?
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. Despite my complexion, I do not like being in the heat. I prefer to be in colder climates. I prefer to be somewhere cold.
Okay.
And the heat was awful, but thankfully we had industrial cooling. But there was one, I think there was, if I recall, there was one time where the air conditioner broke at the
Oh
office, and
my gosh.
it was boiling.
Oh, how hot was it outside?
Boiling.
Tell me.
I walked outside. I would walk outside. As a matter of fact, I actually would get up. I would try to get up at 4 a.m. to get to work early, just because early in the morning you reach the low 95s. Now that's considered low. That is considered low. You reach the low 95s. If you leave anywhere later than 7 or 8 o'clock, you were starting to get into the hundreds.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
you would start to inch towards the 105s and then the 115s.
No.
And the heat of 115 was almost daily.
No.
And it was absolutely awful.
I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I'm a pretty big, stocky dude. If it's over like 70 degrees, 75 degrees, I'm sweating and I'm getting all gross and nasty. I could not do that. No. I commend you. You stuck it out for a year, because after that year, what happened? I stole you and got you to move out to Boston.
There was a panic. I sent you a message, and then you stole me.
Oh, that's right. So what happened? Tell me more about the panic.
The panic came when apparently budgeting, the parent owner of the company decided to cut the funding in half, literally slash the funding. Ooh. and to make sure not to be spending too much, they started to let people go left and right.
Okay.
We lost 2 warehouse guys. We lost 3 artists and 1 engineer.
Yeah, that's always rough, and that's always a sign when you've got to start considering other options and panicking and watching out for your own kind of future and bills and all of that. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. And then you sent me a message. I know at that time you sent me a message probably at a perfect timing, because I think right around then we were looking to ramp up our team where we're currently working, which is Boston Productions Inc. And you went through a short interview process. You ended up doing a few rounds of interviews, I think like 2 of them, and then you just kind of up and moved out here, right?
Yeah, I just left Competition Interactive. Felt kind of bad because I loved working with the team, but had to move on.
Sorry, guys. I stole him. If you guys have a problem with it, we can take it up another time. You moved out to Boston from Vegas. Yeah, I drove to Boston when I moved out here a little bit before you from let's say LA, although I'm from San Diego. You drove from Glendale. Yeah, I drove from Glendale, pulling a trailer, carrying a 200-pound English Mastiff, my cat, and my fiance with me, and that was one heck of a drive. Now, you drove from Vegas in a tiny coupe, and you got here in like 3 days.
I had absolutely no sleep that day. I had very little sleep during the day, and thankfully I had older brothers who were willing to help me with the drive.
Yeah.
Holy crap, imagine if I had to do that alone.
Yeah, that would have been intense.
It would have been intense. And the thing is, I was driving a Camaro. That thing, a warning to anyone out there, don't get a Camaro. Especially if you're an engineer and you're going to be jumping between jobs and between states, don't get a Camaro. Get something that'll haul stuff. Because that Camaro couldn't carry enough. There was a lot of stuff I had to leave behind. There's still a lot of stuff I had to sell.
Yeah. Well, that's just how it is. But you at least have a super cool car. I mean,
it's cool, but it's useless in the terms of moving.
Yeah. Well, either way, it was a cool experience, right? You drove through basically the entire U.S. coming up here, and that was a good experience. And now, what do you do? So, what is your actual role with us at BPI?
I'm an interactive developer. I develop interactive software for private companies and public companies to like museums and stuff like that. And a lot of it is done through Unity and C#.
Okay. So you are basically telling me over the last 3 years, you graduated just about 3 years ago. You've done probably 3, 4 different jobs. And let's not throw out exact figures unless you want to. But what did you start off with? What was that very first internship paying you? Was it pennies? Was it
Just above, just above. It was just above minimum wage at the time. So minimum wage at the time was $10 an hour. So it was 14 per hour, but technically 12 since I had to take a cut of that and put it towards taxes
okay?
as a contractor.
Okay, and then you moved on to the place in Lake Forest. Did you get an increase there?
I got an increase, major increase. It was not worth the drive though. It was 19. It was 19 per hour
Yeah, as a contractor still.
as a
So
contractor. So technically like 15 per hour.
yeah, so you were making what is that conversion? I think 25 an hour turns out to be around 50K. So at 20 an hour, you're probably making around like 40, something around there, a little less. As a contractor, you take a quarter of that out, although that's probably a little conservative, and you save that and put it aside. So you're really only making like 14 an hour. Then you're paying your gas and all the mileage and wear and tear you're putting on the car and all of that stuff. So you're making very, very little at that
So
point.
at that point, it wasn't even about making money at that time. It
It
was
was just
basically
experience.
getting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put up with it for the experience alone.
Yeah. So then you moved over to Vegas. That was another slight increase. So that was $1 increase, but now you're an employee in a state that doesn't tax your income. So you were only paying federal taxes on it with a lower cost of living. How did that feel?
It felt great. It felt great. It felt great being able to pay rent.
Yeah.
It felt great being able to. I lived right next door to a Albertsons. I literally could just walk to the Albertsons whenever I was hungry, and I would just walk there and get my food. And I always had extra dosh for food.
That's nice. It's a great feeling, isn't it? The first time you get to afford your own apartment or your own place to live, that's awesome, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's no feeling like it. The first time you get to do it, it's amazing, and I'm glad you've got to experience it now. So now from there, you've moved all the way out to the East Coast, and because you're currently still employed at the location, you don't need to share your actual income, but was it a increase in salary?
It was a significant increase. Cost
Okay.
of living, though, it makes me question it every day.
Okay. But you're getting a ton of good experience, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right, so we know now you're out in Boston. Tell me about what the interview experience has been for you. A lot of the companies you've been at have been pretty small overall. I think Vegas was probably a decent step up from the contract work you did before that. And then now where you are at Boston Productions, that was also a decent step up. But you've done interviews elsewhere too. What's the largest company you've interviewed with?
Oh gosh, I would have to say the largest company I interviewed with was a company down in Helsinki, Finland, and it was a musician. I think the company's name was. Yeah, that's the largest company I ever interviewed with because apparently they had like the most employees I've seen so far.
How in the world did you talk to a company out in Finland? How the heck do you get them to randomly interview you?
I sent an application.
Okay.
I was just so one of the key things that I've been trying to do over the past year and a half now has been I've been trying to open my range from just working in the US as a software developer. I was trying to step into international work. So doing work
Okay.
in, if I can do work in Canada, Finland, Japan,
Yeah.
anywhere around the globe that I can probably get work, and preferably somewhere cold. I actually was really hoping to go there, but
So for those of you guys working at companies overseas or you recruiters watching this, Rob liked the idea of working internationally. I don't want you guys to take him from me because he's working with me right now at my company, but keep it in mind, reach out to him if you need.
that would be nice.
So
That
tell
would be
me,
nice.
how did they reach out to you? So you submit an application. How did they reach out to you?
I got a message on LinkedIn, I believe.
Ah.
Yeah, I got a message on LinkedIn. No, no,
Okay.
no, no. It was I actually got a full email. The recruiter there sent me an email and said, "Well, I think you're a strong candidate. We would like to test you, vet you, and see if you'd be a good fit for the role."
Okay. What did they make you do? Did you do a technical interview? Did you talk to the recruiter first?
I talked to the recruiter first, and then minutes after talking to the recruiter, he sent me a test, and this test was a week-long test.
I've done a
Um,
handful of those.
yeah, I was surprised, and it was using technology that I had never used, so they wanted to gauge how well I'm able to implement technology that I just haven't used before, and
Okay.
well, yeah,
So did that not turn out well? I have a feeling.
no. If it did, I would have had a second interview, but I
Okay.
didn't. So the test, I sadly I bombed.
Okay.
But they did give me enough feedback to know where I went wrong with the test.
That's awesome. Okay. A lot of companies don't give you feedback nowadays. I think it's a bigger thing within the states. A lot of companies are afraid of legal repercussions due to providing a candidate with negative feedback that can be used against them, so they don't. But I assume because this company was in Finland, they were willing to give you feedback, which is awesome. So
Yeah, and
that's
I, and
cool.
I really, I really am thankful for it because it lets me know where I need to improve.
Yeah.
So there's two ways when it comes to rejection like that. There's two ways a person can take it. They can either take it to heart and be pissed and be like, well, they don't know what they're dealing with, or you can look at it and be like, okay, there's something I need to learn here.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm messing up. Here's where I'm not doing well, and I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And I looked at that feedback, and I'm gonna try that test again personally, just to be able to improve where I went wrong.
Okay. Spoken like a true professional and a lifelong learner. That's good to hear. So that was a company that gave you a week long programming test. I've done a fair share of those. I do not like doing those at all anymore. If I've talked to companies in the past or in like recent times, or if I talk to them in the future, I hate doing week long tests. That's a lot of time that you're going to put into it. But sometimes it makes sense, and some people like those. Have you ever done any other technicals? Any other kind of technical exams or tests that are part of the interview process?
Yes, some have sent me technical tests, and actually others have done phone technical tests, but they were mostly like, "Do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? Have
Okay.
you used this? Um, explain what a stack or a queue is." A lot of them were Unity is like, "Have you ever used?" um have you ever used just any type of technology or any type of basic data structure that they want to throw at you?
Okay. Yeah, so those are like the phone ones. Then I'm sure you've done like the online programming ones where they give you a link to something on like HackerRank or like a leak code type problem, right?
Yes, actually, now that I think back on it, I'm going to correct a previous statement that I made about the biggest company I applied for or that I interviewed with, and it was actually Amazon, and they sent me the programming test, and I did not do so well.
That happens. Have you ever been exposed to those types of problems before?
Prior to the actually getting the test, no,
Okay.
no, I haven't.
Okay. So,
Um,
and it's completely different, right?
oh, it is very different. It is very different. It is such a. When I first started, I would always get interviews with smaller companies, and smaller companies they don't really care about your skill. They just want to bring somebody in who's able to do the work. But bigger companies, they really care about your skill, and they want to make sure you at least know the bare bones basics.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, your analysis of that somewhat correct. I think small companies tend to want to hire more interpersonally, and then they want to see that you can do the exact job they need you for. Versus the big companies, they're receiving tons of applications. They need some sort of way to vet people and ensure that you can program because most of the time, if you're doing a software development job at a large company, you're going to be programming a lot. So they give you a standardized test, and it's hard to bite the bullet and just study for those. But those are always the same, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft. They all do the standardized leak code type problems where it's like a data structures, algorithms, dynamic programming type problem, and you have a short time frame to solve them. So I think you're getting there, and you're beginning to see that if you want to go to those big four, big five companies, you have to study your butt off with those basics in order to do
basics,
it.
Basic stuff that well, actual software development students learn in college.
Yeah, I think it's that, but then also it's basic stuff that you only really learn in college, because once you get into software development, most of us know, if you've been in industry for a while, you don't usually do that type of problem solving. You don't go and solve leak code problems daily in your job if you're hired as a web developer. You're probably going to be implementing as a web developer either front end type of apps which are connecting to a back end, or you're going to be implementing some back end stuff. So maybe you're putting together some databases, some APIs in between those, stuff like that. And you're not solving like a leak code question that asks you to check, oh, how can you tell if this linked list is actually a circular linked list? I don't know off the top of my head, but you could figure it out. It's not that hard. So it's just, you have to change the mindset, because that's a different form of testing rather than implementing and solving real problems from real life. So I totally get that. And I think you're starting to see that too now, right?
Yeah, I started to practice basically daily and get at least one or two leak code questions done a day.
Okay.
Just to get my skills up to par, because I don't know if I'm going to be asked those questions later,
Yeah.
or if I'm going to have, go with a company that it may not even be one of the big five. It may be a smaller and big company, but they're going to send me that question. And I have to be able to answer that leak code question, because a lot of companies, take inspiration from how the big five vet.
Yeah, it's true. So with that, I want to go ahead and wrap this interview up. But before I do, I want to get you to give your top few kind of tips for anybody else that is either about to get out of college and get into industry, or maybe they've already finished, or maybe they're getting into college and doing it. What kind of tips would you give them to prepare for industry? So if they're going to the game development world, or software development, or web development, what professional tips do you have now after your 3 years of experience that they're just not going to know yet that you can share?
Okay. Tip number one, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of rejection, because that is like 100% that is 100% of surviving in this industry, is not being afraid of rejection. You get rejected, don't take it to heart. Move on, apply everywhere else. That's my number one to tell anyone coming out of college. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to show your work, and don't be afraid to step up and ask questions. Because if you don't, you're not going to improve. And if you don't work on what you want to do, you're not going to get anywhere. And I definitely, that goes to number two. Number two, make something as often as possible, and show it. Don't hide it. If it's a $1 million idea, don't be afraid to show it. That's living proof that you continue to work on your own outside of work.
Yeah.
And number three, definitely for game companies, and for any company, because even game companies, I've gotten the similar tests, and I got a similar type of leak code style test from, of all people, Insomniac Games. And definitely practice all the leak code stuff. Like, spend almost a day or two, if not spend like an hour trying to figure out a leak code problem. At least an hour a day doing leak code problems. An hour a day implementing a linked list. An hour a day implementing a stack, a queue, binary search tree and so on. Spend at least an hour doing all of that, so that when the time comes that somebody asks you to do that, and you'd be surprised when you walk in there and you get asked to do something you basically practiced the night before, you're gonna be like, I got this. I can do this.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So those are awesome tips. I definitely appreciate you, Rob, taking the time to kind of talk about your background, how you got into industry, how you decided to go into this field is amazing. That is one heck of a story. And I hope people enjoy kind of listening to your background, and I hope they're encouraged by it, because it really helps to show that, I mean, we all have various backgrounds. We don't all come from a background in science or engineering. We figure it out as we go. We learn, and when we want it, we try our rear ends off to get better, right? So I definitely appreciate you taking your time, Rob. Thanks again.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully we'll get you on here again soon. We can talk a lot more about actual problems that you face day in and day out. For everybody else now, I'm going to go ahead and kind of close out here. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe down below. It should be right below my finger pointing at Rob's face right here. And if you're not subscribed yet, please do. Check out our website at journeytoprogramming.com. We have a lot of content on there, and we're updating it weekly. And if you have any comments, critiques, put them down below in the comments. And if you have a question or a topic request, please do post them in the comments down below, or post them on our website, journeytoprogramming.com. We do have a request a topic button on there. Have a good one, you guys.
Take care.